Coming to you from 4,200 feet in the hills of Oregon, it's the voice of Chitown, the reddest beard in the high desert, your host of the MOA broadcast, Sam Wilson. Okay, folks, we have a great show lined up for you today. All kinds of good stuff. I can already tell I'm probably going to have to cut some of this on the fly. We're just going to have too much good stuff. A couple of show highlights. Let's see. We've got Naked Florida Man. Of course, where else, right? More Chicago crime, a bicycle rampage, backpacking and camping stoves. Got some good info there. And a Supreme Court ruling on police protection. Not a new one, but this one is one that a lot of folks are not familiar with. We're going to cover it. Probably get to that in the second half of the show. So, that being said, I had to adjust my volume there. Okay, let's get to it. First, we go to Tampa, Florida. Naked Florida man accused of stabbing senior and choking child. Guys, you can't even make this up. I mean, I learned long ago in a variety of different jobs I've had in life that reality is far stranger than fiction. Sometimes I tell some people, I tell them some of the things that that have experienced or have happened to me in my life. I don't usually tell most people because it sounds too insane. When you deal with really insane people, and for whatever reason I've come into more than my fair share of contact with them, they do things that are far stranger than fiction. If you were to write books about these things or have a show about them, people would say, that's got to be fiction. That's over the top. Nobody would actually do something like that. But here we have a real live headline from this week of a naked Florida man stabbing a senior and choking a child. Let's get to the story. A naked Florida man is accused of stabbing an 81-year-old man and putting a 7-year-old girl in a chokehold. Oh my God! In a chokehold on Sunday. The Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, HCSO for future reference, said at 4 p.m. deputies responded to a call reporting a naked man jumped a fence at a home on Spence Avenue. A 7-year-old girl was in the backyard playing on a trampoline when the man put her in a chokehold. It doesn't say why he put her in the chokehold. The girl's mother witnessed the horrific scene and rescued the girl with the help of neighbors. I can't imagine the terror this mother must have felt as she watched a violent man lay hands on her child. Sheriff Chad Cronister said the bravery shown by her and the neighbors who intervened to rescue this girl is heroic. Now, folks, I know what you're all thinking. What's it like to wrestle a naked man? Fear not, I can tell you from experience, having been assaulted by naked men on more than one occasion, it's not as fabulous as you might think. I'm not going to get too graphic. This is a radio show, and then it becomes a podcast, obviously. We try and keep this family friendly. You'll note the lack of curse words or bleeping things out and so forth. It's just not as glamorous as you think it is, because whenever you're fighting, you don't have time to think about things like, shall we say, hand placement and everything. It's a free-for-all. Okay, so you wind up running into, brushing up on, and touching things that you sincerely regret later on. When you have flashbacks of it, it's not the most pleasant, the most pleasant thing. Also, fighting, you see this in the animal kingdom a lot too. Whenever animals are being attacked or they're fighting violently, it's not uncommon for them to release their bowels. There are a variety of reasons this happens. We're not going to go into a whole biology lesson. You can look it up. It's actually pretty simple. The same thing happens when humans fight. Okay, so what started off as just a bizarre and weird situation of having a naked man attack you often turns into a very messy situation as things start happening with their bodies and exiting at, shall we say, high rates of speed. So we'll leave it at that. But let me just say, it's not the glorious and fabulous experience you might have thought it was. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming. The sheriff's office said the suspect fled on foot, but didn't get far. When deputies arrived, they found the suspect hiding under a covered porch in a backyard near Kimball Avenue and Harold Avenue and arrested him. Through investigative means, I'm not exactly sure what that's supposed to mean, deputies learned that after running away from the first residence, the suspect entered another home and stabbed an 81-year-old man. The elderly victim was transported to the hospital and is being treated for his injuries. This individual's evil actions targeted both a child and an elderly person, showing disregard for human life, said Sheriff Chronister. Man, the sheriff's office identified the suspect as Joan Gonzalez Vasquez. After he was taken to Tampa General Hospital, the 27-year-old was booked in the Orient Road Jail for 2 charges of burglary with battery and 1 charge of aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. The sheriff's office said Vasquez may face additional counts. So far, no mention of indecent exposure. Man, you got to wonder what's going on. I mean, I don't know about you. My first thought runs to there's got to be drugs or intoxication of some sort would be my thought. I don't know, a guess. The article doesn't really say. Because in addition to walking around buck naked in broad daylight, why the additional? I mean, this guy, it's not like these people ran into him. In the first case, he had to jump a fence to get into this family's backyard. And then he started choking a 7-year-old girl on a trampoline, allegedly. I'm not laughing at the poor kid. That's horrible. But this is, if someone was to tell you that this was happening on TV right now on the news, or it was happening outside your house, you would think they were joking. I mean, think about it. Be honest. If somebody came running into your house and told you that a naked dude just hopped into your backyard and is choking your daughter out on a trampoline, wouldn't you think he was joking? Of course you would. That's insane. And then he left there, broke into a house apparently, and stabbed an 81-year-old man. Wow. I tell you, Florida, they do not disappoint down there. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Now, if you'll recall from last week's episode, we kind of have given New York a bit of a break or a reprieve from being hammered on their insane levels of crime there. We're going to go back to Chicago, though, because they get no such reprieve. Man, where was this? What part of Florida was this? Oh, it was Tampa. What a shame. I've been to Tampa a number of times, had a lot of good memories. The 2 things that jump out to me from Tampa, and this is going back a few years, but Busch Gardens. So if you've never been to Busch Gardens, I don't know what it's like now. It's been years since I've been there. Busch Gardens was kind of like a Six Flags. It was a theme park, amusement park, and all kinds of good rides. And I mean, this is going back a few years, but I had a lot of good memories. I went several times. We would get tickets and go there as a family. And anyways, it was a lot of fun, but I think that's right outside or right inside Tampa. And the other thing was, that was the first place. Growing up in the Midwest, I had never had a Krispy Kreme donut. And Krispy Kreme, I think, it's a southern-based chain. I think they're based out of North Carolina or something. Somebody will correct me on that. Anyways, they're a southern-based donut chain. And Krispy Kremes, for those of you that never had them, some people love them and some people hate them, but they're a very well-liked donut in general. They're extremely sweet, but it's almost like eating liquid sugar when you put it in your mouth. They're very good when they're fresh. I don't care for them as much when they're cold, but when they're very fresh, so you'll know they're fresh if you're driving through and the big Krispy Kreme sign will be on. It's a neon sign. And if the sign is lit up, I think it's usually red. It's been a while since I've been to a Krispy Kreme. I live in the middle of nowhere now in Southern Oregon, in the hills of Southern Oregon. So when the sign is lit up, I think it's red neon sign. That means the donuts are coming off the line. The neat thing is about a Krispy Kreme, you can go there and you see the donuts coming off the line. It's really cool. And you can get them hot when they're piping fresh. You'll smell it before you see it if you've got a good nose on you. And the donuts they're delicious when they're hot. You put them in your mouth and you take a bite, and I mean, it literally just dissolves into sugar in your mouth. They're very good. I can only eat a couple when I was younger and had a bigger sweet tooth. I don't eat much in the way of sweets now, but I could sit there and eat I would eat a whole a tray of them, a dozen or whatever it was. And I mean, they were good. But if you never had a Krispy Kreme, try one, especially when they're fresh. Don't make your judgment on if it's cold. It's like In-N-Out Burger. I love In-N-Out Burger. I don't think they're the greatest burgers in the world, but I really, really like them. Double animal style when they're hot coming out of the oven or the grill, excuse me, and they're delicious. And it's a whole experience. Going to In-N-Out for me, and I'm not getting paid by In-N-Out or Krispy Kreme, believe me. In-N-Out, I like their franchise, their modus operandi, the way they do business. It's very organized, it's very efficient, and even though there's a bit of a wait, because every time I've ever been to In-N-Out, even sometimes I went to one early, it was either late at night, I don't know how late they're open, but I went to one after a concert once, and late, and it was still packed. So there's a long line. You got to watch because, it's just, there's always a line there usually. And they're very efficient though. And you order and you take a seat, you get your order, yada, yada, yada. But the burgers are delicious. The point I was trying to make though, before I started to meander off into another story, is because the Phil Collins concert was amazing, that I went to I think it was at the Forum in Los Angeles, California. And the French fries though. So there are a lot of mixed reviews on In-N-Out French fries, and I got to shut up because I'm taking too much time here. But In-N-Out French fries to me are they're decent to mildly good when they're hot, when they're extremely fresh. The minute they get to like room temperature or cold though, I can't stand In-N-Out French fries. I will usually get them animal style as well, which is like with the sauce on there, the Thousand Island dressing or whatever in the world it is, and cheese. I think it's been a while since I've been In-N-Out, but I get them animal style. Eat the fries first though, because they are a totally different animal, no pun intended, when they are cold or not fresh. Same thing with the Krispy Kreme donuts. Don't judge them if you get one that's been around for a while or that's not, that's room temperature. You get them fresh off the line because they have a conveyor belt. You can get them fresh off the line if the neon sign is on. Get them fresh, totally different experience. Okay, now let's get back to where were we? Chicago. Okay. This is a bizarre story. I found every article that I found and researched on this is the most winding story possible. It's not a very linear story, so we're going to try and keep this as brief as possible. A Chicago man, another once great city that I spent a lot of time in, ate a lot of good food, from Lou Malnati's to Giordano's Pizza to Chicago dogs and the popcorn. It's a whole other deal. Anyways, a Chicago man has been charged with killing two people, one of them his own brother, according to family, and injuring another person in Gage Park on the city's southwest side over the weekend. Robert Romo, 57, now pay attention to that name, Romo, it's going to come up later, 57, has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, along with 3 other felony counts, one of attempted first-degree murder, one of aggravated battery use of a deadly weapon, and one of aggravated unlawful possession of a weapon. He was scheduled for court on Wednesday morning, yada, 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 been moved to Monday. What happened? So the double homicide first. Officers were initially called to the scene following a report that someone had been shot in the area. When they arrived just before 10 p.m. Sunday, they found an open door toward the back of an apartment building. Officers announced their presence and went inside, and they found 2 victims dead inside. They were later identified by authorities. Now remember, the man arrested was Robert Romo, 57. The bodies were identified as 63-year-old Richard Romo and 64-year-old Rita Chavez. Police say Richard Romo was shot in the head, and Chavez had suffered multiple injuries to her body. A police source later confirmed that Chavez had been stabbed several times. Horrible. And a relative identifying as a cousin of Romo told them that Chavez was Richard Romo's girlfriend. So, according to the story, the way it looks is Robert Romo allegedly has shot Richard Romo, his brother, and his girlfriend, Richard Romo's girlfriend, 64-year-old Rita Chavez. What a shame. But it doesn't stop there. This guy, I don't know what happened. They don't explain what set this guy off allegedly or what happened. But the second incident, which police believe is now connected, unfolded a short time later, just after 10 p.m. at an establishment called Just One More Sports Bar. That business is located next door to the apartment building. Is that it for this page? Okay. Police say during that incident, a 57-year-old man. Now remember, Robert Romo was 57. And this is what I mean about this story. Every version I read of this, they dance around this whole thing. So I don't know what the deal is. Maybe the stories were amended or whatever. I don't know. But it appears the same man was armed with a pistol and a knife, approached another man outside the bar and followed him inside. Once inside, the suspect, with his gun still in hand, walked to the back of the bar where he then allegedly attacked a 44-year-old woman with a knife. She suffered multiple lacerations to her body and was later transported to an area hospital where she was listed in good condition. So, man, what a horrible tragedy. And yeah, it doesn't say in this one, but so let's see, he was taken into custody, a gun was discovered at the scene, so on and so forth. A family member who spoke with the news said he believed his cousin went mad and visited the bar shortly after visiting the apartment, but police have not provided any details on what led up to the incidents. So, real shame. At least 2 people are dead. Another person has been stabbed and suffered lacerations. Now, obviously, the point simply being when it comes to situational awareness, I don't really go to bars in the first place. Everyone's free to do what they want, but I have found in my experience in life, very little good happens at bars. I'm not saying bars are bad, and maybe this, what's it called, Just One More Sports Bar or whatever. I'm not saying it's their fault at all, but typically bars tend to lead to, anytime you get people together, large groups of people, and they're, focused primarily on alcohol, you can expect some bad things to follow. But anyway, hopefully they all recover. But remember, folks, we talked about situational awareness. I would have to imagine this guy would be noticeable. I mean, if he didn't have blood on him, or he had to at least look disheveled, I would think. You see somebody coming in like that into a bar, it's time to get out of there. I did, in one of the stories I read, it indicated that a man had intervened to stop him while he was attacking this woman, apparently. So I couldn't find that. I must have said that in a different article. But yeah, scary, scary place. We're going to get into that later, though, too, when it comes to whether the police are going to or have to protect you. Interesting Supreme Court decision. Okay, let me have a sip here. Let's see. Let's go on to listener emails. We're going to move this up because I've got so much good stuff today, and we are going to run out of time, I can already tell. We're not going to make it to that one. I'll have to trim that story on the fly. First email comes to us from Mark. This was an email. Hello, I have enjoyed listening to the show. My question is, why do you have the video versions behind a paywall on Patreon? Why not put those out for free as well? Thank you, Mark. Good question, Mark. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Patreon, spelled Patreon, it is a site where you can basically put up, it's like a social media site where you can put up content, some of which, and you can designate how you want it displayed. Some of it will be displayed free to the public. Some of it you have to pay to access. The idea behind it is it's a subscriber type site. There are a lot of different ways you can set up subscriptions and so forth. But in general, the simplest answer to that question is we do it because a lot of work goes into this. Even though this is a weekly show, it's almost an hour long. We have what I would consider a reasonably high quality audio version, and then we have a reasonable, home quality, even though it's on a good camera, it's HD, video version as well. And the idea being the effort that it goes to edit both the audio and the video, put it all together and produce this show, that takes some time. And I think we put a lot of effort into putting out a quality product here at the Make It Out Alive broadcast. So that allows those that wish to, no one is required to, but those that wish to subscribe, get the video version as part of their package, along with other little videos and updates and behind the scenes. We're working on a lot more content coming up for the Patreon page as well. But that's why, because it takes a lot of time and effort. And, this show goes out as a radio show first, and then it gets uploaded to the popular podcast sites. So the video version, you can find all the information about the Patreon on our website at www.gearconvoy.com. There's a tab at the top that takes you to the MOA broadcast page, and you can find all the info there. So that being said, we appreciate our subscribers. They give us some nice info, get a lot of good feedback. They are usually more engaged than the general public. So we get lots of feedback and info from them as far as topics on the show and so forth. So that is the reason. The audio version gets uploaded to both YouTube at, I think it's Gear Convoy is our channel there, but YouTube and Spotify and our website, everybody can access the audio version for free. So for those like listening to podcasts, that's free. The video does take some time, and that's why there's the paywall. The subscription costs are very small. It's like $5 or $10, depending on what you select per month. So that answers that. We'll move on to our next one. This one is from Rick, and this is also concerning our Patreon page. Hello, I've been subscribing to your Patreon page. Thank you very much, Rick, and watching the videos of the show for a couple of episodes now. I have to say, you don't look like I thought you would based on your voice. I don't know exactly what that means, but thank you, hopefully. Not in a bad way, LOL. Anyway, I enjoyed the video you just put up the other day about giving your dog Bacon, hilarious name by the way, chicken nuggets. So one of the things we do is we to establish a rapport with our subscribers, I'll post little videos throughout the day occasionally, or every day, every other day, whatever. Just the other day, I took my dog named Bacon. He's a pointer, beautiful dog. He gets a lot of attention from all the ladies. Trust me, he's a lover, not a fighter. Anyway, we were feeding him some chicken nuggets after he was good. He was a good boy all day running errands in town. So that's what Rick is referencing here. Rick says, my dog loves chicken McNuggets as well. I hate to give him McDonald's, but it's just an occasional treat. I agree. You got to be careful with McDonald's. Now, here's not to bash McDonald's. Whatever. We've gone over it. We'll get to other things later. But when it comes to McDonald's, my dog, Bacon is his name. Bacon loves potatoes and he loves French fries. He loves waffle fries. He loves French fries, and he will eat them up. I mean, he gobbles them up. Now, the interesting thing is he loves McDonald's chicken nuggets or chicken McNuggets, I guess, and he loves Big Macs, but he will not touch their French fries. Isn't that interesting? You got to wonder, because we all know that they used to, cook the French fries at McDonald's in beef tallow or whatever it was at the time. It was real beef tallow, I believe. Now they use some seed oil. They do not taste the same. I don't even really like, and that's another case of where if they're not hot, they're just disgusting. Most French fries don't, improve in flavor as they get colder, but they do not taste good if they're not piping hot. So anyways, no matter what, even if he's hungry, he will not eat those French fries. Just an interesting side note. But back to Rick. Sorry to ramble. This is Rick, not me. Sorry to ramble, but I guess my question is this. Have you really been to all those places and restaurants that you talk about in the show? It seems like a lot. Anyway, thanks for the content. I listen to it while at work, and keep up the good work, Rick. Yes, the answer is yes, Rick. I do. Everything I tell you is genuine. There's no reason I would make that up. In many cases, I can have corroborating witnesses if you would like to hear them. But I've lived all over the United States in my few short years here on Earth and from coast to coast. So, and plus I've done a lot of traveling for work and such, not as much recently, but in the past quite a bit. So yeah, all those things are real, and you can check them out if you like. If you read these things, you can go to Google Maps or wherever and check these places out. They're 100% legit. So that's my answer to that. Thank you again, Rick, for your support. Okay, now we are going to move on to backpacking and camping stoves. Now we've got a couple of feedbacks about people they like the focus on the outdoors and the backpacking and camping side of things. So today we're going to talk. I mentioned last week we talked about hammock camping as opposed to being in tents or shelters or whatever else. So I've done a lot of backpacking. Some years I've put in literally a couple 100 miles on the trail while backpacking. I haven't done any of the big through hikes like the Pacific Crest Trail or the Appalachian or anything like that. Haven't had the time for that, but usually I would do a 3 to 4 day trip, and I like covering miles. I'm not superhuman. I've never been in fantastic shape, I guess, not for a long time anyway. But I would typically, if I was by myself or had one other person with me that would keep up, I would easily put in between 12 and 15 miles in a day. And that's because I focused on mileage. I like mileage, and then I like to sit there and drink coffee around the campfire. That being said, I've got a good bit of experience, in my opinion, on backpacking and camping. More backpacking, more so than camping. But stoves. So if you are not familiar with backpacking or camping stoves, there are a number of different types. I'm going to go ahead and read off the main types that you typically encounter, and then we'll kind of go through the pros and cons. There's the choo-choo train, if you hear that in the background. Remember, we're not doing this in the sound booth. We do this in the knife shop so that we can do the video as well, so you have to deal with a little bit of background noise. Okay, now the primary different types you're going to encounter as far as backpacking stoves are the fuel canister or the cartridge types, the white gas stoves, alcohol stoves, and then like wood burner or twig stoves. Now there are more types. We're not going to go into every single exhaustive type, but those are the primary, in my experience, the primary types you encounter here in the U.S. While backpacking. They've all got their merits. They've all got their pros and cons. So what it really boils down to is you need to go and try them out and find out what works best for you. The good news is most of these stoves can be had if you buy American, or especially if you buy Chinese versions, like off Amazon or eBay. You can get, each one of these types of stoves usually for under $50, and many of them you can get for under $20 or even under $10 if you hunt around for them or buy them used. So you get a chance to really try them out, see what works best for you, and then you kind of adapt it. Because whenever you go backpacking, what you got to do is you got to build a system, is really what it boils down to. The gear and the equipment you have at the beginning of your backpacking journey, I don't mean the actual trip, but when you first get into it, it's going to be very different, usually, from the gear you're going to have, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 years into it. Because you make adjustments, you make improvements, you get rid of this, you acquire that, and so forth. Now, we're going to get into this a little bit more in depth. We got to take a break. When we get back from the break, though, we're going to discuss the camping stoves, and then we're going to get into the Supreme Court decision on police protection. When we get back from the break. More Make It Out Alive with Sam Wilson after this.
Want to get your business noticed? Sponsor a show on KKFO Gold Country Radio on 103.3 FM and create awareness through on-air announcements, our online stream at goldcountryradio.org, and our podcasts that live on forever. Your message reaches a broad local audience while also targeting listeners who choose to tune in to the shows they love. Plus, we promote your sponsorship across our website and social media. For more information, email goldcountryradio@gmail.com. Call 541-238-6989 or visit goldcountryradio.org. Gold Country Radio, your message heard locally and beyond.
You're listening to the MOA broadcast with Sam Wilson. Will you make it out alive? And we are back from the break. Okay, during the break, I actually got a message from one of our Patreon subscribers in the video that I posted 2-3 days ago, 1 day ago. Anyways, when I went to town and got my dog Bacon some chicken nuggets. So what happened was, briefly in that video, we went to a Burger King and got chicken nuggets. Wanted to try something different. Usually we get them the nuggets from McDonald's. That's what Bacon prefers. First world animals or pets are so spoiled. Anyway, the Burger King nuggets, they were very salty. They weren't bad though. They were very fresh. They just made them so they're piping hot and very, very tender. They were okay though. I try and avoid fast food for the most part. Not being high and mighty. It's like junk food to me. A candy bar, you eat it, you feel satiated and everything for the moment, but then you don't feel like great later on, and then you have self-loathing and regret. Anyway, the point of this is, in the video, while I'm sitting here, it was probably 9:30 at night, I think, and I'm in a very well-lit Burger King parking lot that was adjacent to a hotel and some other places. While I'm sitting here feeding my dog these chicken nuggets, again, in a very well-lit parking lot, these two cop cruisers started circling. I guess they thought I was, who knows what they thought. I don't care. It doesn't really matter. Nothing happened. It was an uneventful situation, but I made some comment in the video that I was making that, the best advice I can give you is avoid running into law enforcement or something of that nature. And someone was asking if I'm anti-police. No, I am not. I am not anti-police. I'm not anti-law and order. I am a huge proponent, you might say, of law and order. When you hear people say they want to abolish the police or get rid of law enforcement, these people are either lying for propaganda purposes or they are absolutely insane. The last thing you want is no law and order and the threat of a police presence or response. Some people, and a lot of people out there in the world, more than you might suspect, are absolutely insane. If there was no threat of consequences for their bad actions, the world would descend extremely quickly into pure bedlam. You do not want no police presence, and that wasn't my point. That being said, though, the problem with an encounter with law enforcement is I do believe firmly that I would probably say even the majority of cops are good, and there is a certain percentage that are very good. They're some of the best people out there. They're doing it for the right reason. They are serving. They're not there to take advantage of the different benefits of being in law enforcement. The problem is you never know which one you're going to get. A couple of years ago, me and a buddy of mine, we were doing nothing wrong. I'll keep this extremely short. We were rousted by the police, and one cop pulled up, said something to us, and then he drove away. He came back about 5 minutes later with 3 other units, and they jumped out of their cars, started gloving up. I mean, they were going to go to town on us. I know what it looks like. I've seen it happen. I know how it goes down. And so we were able to keep extremely calm, and everything, eventually, fizzled out. But they were working my buddy up. He was literally seconds away from getting tased because he was allowing himself to get worked up by the way they were talking to him and treating him. We did nothing wrong. We were not arrested. We were not given a ticket. We weren't even given a warning. We got ID. They ran us. They ran after we gave them our ID. They ran us. Everything was fine. And after my buddy calmed down, it was all over with. But those backup officers, the first officer was a little too overzealous, in my opinion. The 3 guys that showed up with him were practically insane. It was a Friday night, and I think they were just looking for some excitement. But they were gloving up and getting ready to go to town. Again, I know exactly what it looks like. So I'm not, again, saying all cops are bad, but you never know which cop you're going to get. There was an article recently. This was a horrible story, and I got to get back on track here. But these officers showed up to this lady's house. She was an elderly lady, to do a welfare check. And within a minute or two of being there, this cop pulled his gun and shot her dead. She didn't do, there was no reason, in my opinion, for what happened. It was it's a mess. It's still a big scandal. I believe the case is still going on. But you never know which officer you're going to get there and how they may or may not decide to escalate. I saw a video, and this is all I'll say about, we'll get back to the stoves here. An officer recently on this video, a guy was being filmed. He was, protesting something or other, and he was well within his rights. What he was doing was legal. And as the cops, they arrested him illegally. The charges were immediately dropped once his lawyer got involved, and all charges were dropped. But as he's being arrested and stuffed into a cop car, he tells the officer that's taking the lead, I think he was a sergeant, he tells him, he goes, you're violating my rights now, don't you? And the officer, he used some very colorful language. I'll use the PG version for the purposes of our show. He said, I don't give a care. And they locked him up and stuffed him in a car and took his stuff. So you never know what cop you're going to get. So the guy admitted he knew he was violating the man's rights, and he didn't care. So that is all I was saying. You got to be careful out there, man. You never know. It's like anybody out there. You never know what they're going through, what's going on, and what's happening in their world. So my point was just, it's better to avoid encounters with law enforcement unless absolutely necessary. So, all right, back to our show. We're talking about backpacking and camping stoves. I've used all of these types. I have some clear-cut preferences, but I'm going to try and just lay it out briefly. We'll spend about, 5 or maybe 10 minutes on this, depending. You got your fuel, your canister, cartridge types. These are the types that are the small propane or butane or combination fuel stoves. These are very handy. You see these commonly called like pocket rocket type stoves. Jet boil is another one. They're pricey. The jet boil system is pricey, but it is nice. And what these are really the best for is really boiling water. You can cook with them, but they typically, you're going to have most of them will have a lightweight aluminum or titanium pan or pot associated with them, like the jet boil type. And so they put out a lot of heat. They're like a little torch is really what it boils down to. And so they're really good for boiling water. I really wouldn't want to do a lot of cooking because they don't simmer very well. You can simmer with them, but they're not real good at it because they put out so much heat. It's very easy to burn your food. That being said, they're probably about the fastest of the main types for boiling water. So if you're using like freeze-dried or dehydrated food, where all you have to do is add, usually it's 2 cups of boiling water, or you just want to make tea or coffee or a ramen noodle or whatever while you're on the trail, the little propane cartridges they're very good for that. You can get these stoves for like $20 or less all over the place. The little fuel cartridges are usually between $5.99 and $10.99 depending on where you get them. And you can, depending how much you cook on the trail, you can get a couple of trips out of one canister. Or if you're camping with multiple people, you can kind of spread it around where each person brings one. They bring their own fuel canister, and which is like the size of roughly a grapefruit. Okay, and then one person has a little stove, which is like the size of it's like the size of a lemon. They're really small little stoves, and it's going to be beneficial to have a wind shield, which you can make those out of aluminum foil, or a number of other things, because the wind will greatly decrease the efficiency of all of these stoves. So if you can block the wind from where the flame interfaces with your pot, you're going to have much better performance out of all these stoves. The good news is you can make a windscreen out of aluminum foil, out of tin, out of a lot of things, and it weighs literally next to nothing, or you can buy commercially made ones that work very well too. All it has to do is stop the wind from pushing the flame away from your food. It also creates like a little microclimate there that keeps it allows you to heat your pan or your pot or your cup, whatever, up much, much quicker. So those are good for that. The problem with these is, number one, like almost all of these stoves, with the exception of the white gas, they are much less efficient at altitude, meaning at 10,000 feet or so and above. If you're not going anywhere near 10,000 feet, then it doesn't matter. You can choose from any of these stoves. If you're getting at 10,000 feet or up, because of the lower concentration of air pressure and oxygen and so forth, you get a lower quality of combustion, and they're less efficient. White gas is going to be the king for that, but most people aren't in those conditions. So we'll just stick with these here. That being said, the little canister or propane cartridge stoves are good, and you can find them all over the place. You can usually get canisters of fuel at the little pressurized cylinders at like Walmart or any box store. And if you're in a hiking type area, you can find them at even more places. Sometimes hardware stores and so forth will carry them, but any sporting goods place usually has them as well. The little canisters are not easily refillable. I have seen an attachment where you can refill the canisters. I haven't used them, so I don't really know. I stopped using the little canister stoves years ago. I moved on to alcohol stoves, which we'll get to next. But that is one of the downfalls of the canister stoves. You never know exactly how much fuel you have left. So, that being said, they're still a solid option. And if you are the type of person that just wants to get up, boil water for coffee, and then boil hot water for your breakfast thing in the morning and get on the move, they're great for that. I was on a hiking trip a couple of years ago with the guy who had one of the jet boil systems. It was very good for boiling water. So that is where it excels. Up next, you've got white gas. This is like a naphtha-based fuel. It's similar to like a highly refined gasoline type fuel. Anyway, it's liquid and it's not pressurized. You will carry it in a fuel bottle that has a water, tight or fuel tight, whatever, leak-proof lid. And you pour it in there. You got to pump it up. These are like the Whisper Light stoves, and I forget the other names. I used them years ago before a lot of these other stoves were very widely available. They are really good for, again, at altitude. They're very durable. They do require some maintenance. Little jets can get clogged, although they've come a long way over the years. They're better at that. You got to pump them up to pressurize them, and then the combustion and so forth. They're really good for groups because everybody can carry their own can of fuel or however you want to do it, and they're almost like cooking on a gas stove at home. They really have a wide range of temps and simmering available. They're going to be more involved than your average person really wants to get into, in my opinion. I have had the canisters leak before. That's not the stove's fault. That was a faulty, O-ring or whatever it was. It gets white gas all over your clothes, which stinks. It's not fun. That's pretty rare, though, I guess. I only use them on a handful of trips. They were great, like I said, for gourmet cooking out on the trail. I would be hesitant to bring it along again unless I had multiple people. Now, if I was camping instead of backpacking, that would be a different story. Then you're going to be stationary. You don't have to worry about your jets getting clogged or having some kind of problem with it or whatever, or all the weight and bulk because they are a little bit bigger. And again, you can look these up online and see images of them. But MSR, I think, is one of the big brands for making like the Whisper Light. I forget the Simmer Light or what the other one is. We're going back a few years now. But if I was camping, like car camping or something like that, these would be a great choice because then you really got some cooking options. And I mean, you can really get creative. If you look on YouTube, there are a lot of people that make some really, I mean, I would call them a gourmet meal almost in the backwoods. So that's an option. Excuse me one moment. Okay. Now, next we've got alcohol stove. These are my personal favorite. Alcohol stoves they're usually very, very light. They're very simple. All they really are usually is a small combustion chamber. These are, they weigh anywhere from 1 to 3 or 4 ounces, depending on what you get. They don't really have any moving parts. All they are is like a small vessel that has jets built into it. The jets are just holes. And so alcohol stoves, typically they do what's called blooming. They're not really pressurized, but they have like a reservoir of fuel, and then they'll have like several little jets or a way for the flames to escape. And you heat it up or you light it, and as the alcohol gets to the right temperature, it gets heated up, it kind of pressurizes it inside, and then you get little jets come out of them. There are a ton of different alcohol stoves. You can buy them commercially made. You can make them. If you ever want a good fun project, look up the penny stove, and there are all kinds of great tutorials online to make these things. You can make them out of 1 or 2 single, like Pepsi or Coca-Cola, like a soda can, and they work great. I used those for years before I moved on to commercially made ones, just because the problem with the ones made out of a soda can is they're very fragile. I did, however, use one for a 3 or 4 year period. It never failed me. But one day I was prepping in the garage and I actually stepped on it, and that was the end of the story. So they're not the most durable. Now I use, probably my favorite is what's called a Trangia, Trangia. I think they're Swedish or something like that. I think they were their military stove or something. Anyways, you can get the real McCoy version for like, I don't know, probably 15, 20, 25 bucks. They're made out of brass. They're a little bit heavier, but they're about the size of an apple, but they're very, very light. They're very, very tough and durable, much more so than the penny stoves or the ones made out of cans. And they use alcohol. So when we say alcohol, you can use anything from isopropyl alcohol to ethanol to methanol on these. The easiest way to use them is to get what's called heat, H-E-E-T. Now, if you're in America, I don't know if they sell it elsewhere, but in America, you can find this at any gas station, truck stop, hardware store. All it is the stuff you typically add to vehicles to get water out of the fuel line, or like when you're winterizing it. So if you're going to use heat, which I do, it's great. You want to get the yellow can, or it's in a little plastic bottle. Get the yellow bottle, and the yellow bottle is methanol. Methanol is going to burn with a lot more kick than the red bottle, which is isopropyl alcohol. Okay, and the heat, it's methanol. It works great. And the nice thing about the Trangia is, unlike many other alcohol stoves, it has a lid with a big O-ring on there that you can close it back up so you can save the fuel. Some of them, once you light it, you got to let it really run till it runs out, or you got to snuff it out, but they don't have a lid or a way to close them. So you got to toss the alcohol and you lose your fuel. Not a big deal. Most of them have a reservoir that's only 1 or 2 ounces. So, it's not that big of a loss, but it is nice to be able to save it. The Trangia allows you to seal it up and save it. It also has what's called a simmer ring on there. And a simmer ring is just what it sounds like. It's a little device that you put on there, very simple, with a sliding metal lid, and it just kind of chokes out the flame so that you can simmer your food. Next week, we'll get into the type of food that I take on the trail with me, which I make at home and dehydrate myself. You have a wide range of delicious meals, and you can use these for around the house too, for emergencies as well. But what they require, though, is once you heat them up, or once you add water to them, you got to simmer it for 15, 20 minutes. The Trangia works perfectly for that. So I like them. They're extremely lightweight, they're durable, and there's really no moving parts to ever break. So they're a little slower when it comes to boiling water than like white gas or the propane or cartridge stoves. But I don't go into the woods to be race against time and see how fast I can make my coffee in the morning. It typically takes about 8 to 10 minutes on average to boil 2 cups of water. So when it comes to morning coffee, I'll get the alcohol stove going while I'm breaking camp or while I'm stoking up the fire or whatever. So that's that. That's all the time we got for this segment. The other type of stove was the wood burner or twig stoves. I have some of these too. They're the kind I usually take the least with me though, because many places now, especially here in Oregon, where I'm at in the high desert, with all of the wildfires that we have, they have some pretty severe fire restrictions. And you just don't have time, or excuse me, you don't have the ability to have an open flame. Now, it's extremely unlikely that you're going to encounter a park ranger in some of the places, especially like where I go, which is usually pretty remote. But the bottom line is you don't want to be responsible for a wildfire. That'd be a bad deal. Okay, now we go back to Florida this time. We're going to have to keep this story brief because we don't have a ton of time. But this is what triggered the Supreme Court decision or the addition of that story. So let's get to it. We go to Miami. An officer, and this was just the other day, an officer was suspended after a video showed her sitting in her cruiser while bicyclists beat up a man right in front of her. Surveillance video showed several bicyclists pummeling a man, breaking his car window, jumping and stomping on his car, and using a bike to punctuate the vicious beatdown in broad daylight. It all happened as a Miami police officer sat in her car. Now, I saw the video for this. It was insane. It was like a gang. I don't know what these guys are doing, but they're a bicyclist. Somehow they got into it with the driver of a car. I don't know what happened. The video and the story doesn't share what happened or what led up to this. But this all took place. This car pulls up probably 10 or 15 feet away from a cop car in broad daylight at an intersection in Miami. Okay. He gets out of his car, goes over and talks to the officer. And then when he goes back to his car, these bicyclists just jump him. They had to be, 6, 8, 10 of them. There was a whole bunch. I didn't count. But they stomped this guy out. They kicked in his windshield. They busted his car up with bicycles and they were kicking him in the head. I mean, they beat the tar out of this dude. It was brutal. And the whole time it happened, there is a police officer sitting in her car, like 5 feet from, it's happening right in front of her front bumper. So she did not get out. I don't know what was going on with that. She has since been suspended, but it was crazy. So that being said, we're going to have to cut short that part of it. We get to an interesting Supreme Court ruling, though. Most people have never heard of this. I was having a discussion, actually multiple discussions in the last month with a couple of different people, and they had not heard of this. And so we're going to get into this. The Supreme Court has established through cases like Castle Rock v. Gonzalez and DeShaney versus Winnebago County Department of Social Services. Now listen very carefully. This is what the Supreme Court has had to say on this. They said that police and government entities generally have no constitutional duty to protect individual citizens from harm unless a special relationship exists. I'm going to repeat that. They have established that police and government entities generally have no constitutional duty to protect individual citizens from harm unless a special relationship exists. Okay, now we all see a lot of police cars out there that have to protect and to serve on the car door and on their cruisers and stuff. The Supreme Court has ruled they do not have to do that at individual level. Okay, the public duty doctrine. This doctrine, affirmed in cases like Castle Rock v. Gonzalez, states that government officials, including police, generally owe a duty to the public as a whole rather than to specific individuals. Okay? A special relationship what is the special relationship spoken of? That can arise in specific circumstances, such as when the government takes someone into custody, makes a promise of protection, or creates a situation where an individual is particularly vulnerable to harm. Now, we're going to have to speed through this, and we'll come back to this and readdress it next week because we're running out of time here. Examples of cases. Castle Rock v. Gonzalez. The court ruled that, this is in 2005, the court ruled that police had no duty to protect a woman from her husband after he violated a restraining order and killed their children, even though the order required his arrest. Okay? And briefly, that Castle Rock decision, I'm going to read that briefly. The Castle Rock ruling stemmed from a lawsuit that grew out of a restraining order issued in conjunction with divorce proceedings between Jessica and Simon Gonzalez. A month after it was issued, the couple's 3 girls disappeared from Jessica Gonzalez's home. Suspecting that her husband had taken the children in violation of the judge's order, Jessica Gonzalez complained to the police and provided evidence in the form of a phone call in which Simon Gonzalez indicated he'd taken the children to an amusement park. The police told Jessica Gonzalez to wait and see if the children were returned by 10 p.m. They were not. Shortly after 10 p.m., Jessica Gonzalez notified the police her children were still missing, but was again told to wait for their return, this time until midnight. She then went to the police station to file a report. The responding officer allegedly took no action and instead went to dinner. A few hours later, the husband showed up at the police station with a gun and opened fire at the police station. He was killed by officers who then found the dead bodies of the missing children in the back of his truck. Jessica Gonzalez sued the city of Castle Rock, alleging the police department had an official policy or practice of ignoring violations of restraining orders. The case was dismissed, and that's when the court, they rejected that claim, the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's when they, writing for the majority, Justice Antonin Scalia concluded Jessica Gonzalez did not have an interest in police enforcement of a restraining order that would be subject to protection under the Due Process Clause of the U.S. Constitution. So, if you're waiting for the police to protect you, like happened in this Miami case, that's what made me think of it. This, if you watch the video, you can't see the officer, but you see her vehicle. Her vehicle is sitting there 5 feet away from this guy getting brutally beaten. I mean, they are whipping the tar out of this poor man. And she does nothing. It wasn't until other cruisers showed up that I believe she got involved or whatever. But yeah, horrible situation. So you got to be careful out there, folks. That's why situational awareness is so important. And getting out of your car when there's a road rage situation, everybody's got to make their own decision based on the prevailing circumstances and the totality of circumstances in the situation. But man, be careful. People are they're crazy out there. Okay, we're going to have to get to the end. We got to cut that story. When we get back next week, we'll get into a little more into the Supreme Court ruling. And also, Mississippi has joined Florida and Alabama in banning lab-grown meat in the state. We'll get to that story next week. Time to wrap it up. Okay, we go this time. Let me get a sip here momentarily. All right. This time we go to Texas. And if you didn't know better, you'd think this was straight out of Florida. Here is the headline: Hallucinating man allegedly fires on own home and calls 911. Let's get into it. A man who called 911 during a drug-induced hallucination, claiming that people were trying to kill him and that his entire family had been murdered. Being attacked by my piece of paper here, holy smokes. He fired 30 shots into his own home, prompting his loved ones to hide for cover as bullet holes punctuated their house. Homero Salinas, 47, was determined to be the source of the threat when Ferris, Texas, police officers responded to a home at around 2:40 a.m., authorities said. Salinas had been hallucinating after taking cocaine and drinking alcohol when he fired 30 rounds, including multiple gunshots at the front residence where his family lived, police said. He was experiencing hallucinations and acted on the delusional belief that he was under attack and that his family had been killed, a police statement said. His family, unaware that he was the one who made the 911 call or discharged the weapon, they had no idea what is going on. They were found hiding on the floor inside their own home, fortunately unharmed. When officers responded to the home, Salinas was seen walking on a nearby street and taken into custody. He claimed to be wearing a ballistic vest, which was false, police said. After taking his fingerprints, authorities eventually learned that Salinas was a Mexican citizen who was in the U.S. illegally. Uh-oh. Salinas had been handled by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, in 2013, at which time a detainer had been placed on him. Well, I guess after his trip on alcohol and cocaine, now he'll be taking a different kind of trip. This time, back to Mexico, courtesy of ICE. All right, folks, remember, don't wait to prepare. If you wait, it may be too late. If you don't make it out alive, you don't make it out at all. Stay safe out there, folks.